Should you retire early to save on taxes? This is a question our team frequently receives from retirees that maybe have the financial ability to retire, but are trying to further optimize the exact timing of retirement. Retire early and you have more time for things like Roth conversions. Have more time for Roth conversions and you can be much less aggressive, which no doubt leads to bigger tax savings long term. Now, when I say retire early, I mean early relative to your own situation. So early for one retiree can mean retiring at 65 when they had previously planned to work until 67. But if you've watched our videos before, you've heard me talk about a Roth conversion sweet spot or Goldilocks zone for when Roth conversions make the most sense. For most retirees, this Goldilocks zone begins right after you retire and before Social Security begins. Once on Social Security, you could be converting into the Social Security tax torpedo, which no doubt raises your marginal tax rate. Once on RMDs, you must take your RMD first and then convert on top of that RMD. Again, conversions can still be valid here, but are much harder. Now, many of you have seen tax graphs like the one that I have on the screen. Here we have a tax graph for Mike and Sarah, whose situation we'll go a little bit more in depth in a second. They're in their mid-60s, and if they retire now and perform no Roth conversions, they're likely to have some tax pain in the future. On the screen, you will see tax brackets shown through time in the background. And then the green bars show this couple's required minimum distribution expectation. With no conversions, this couple would be pushed into the 24% and eventually the 32% bracket, all from this forced income. Obviously, those RMDs become quite expensive tax-wise in this type of scenario. However, early in retirement, this couple has a lot of space for Roth conversions at low rates due to spending down their brokerage accounts. This is where the Goldilocks zone we are talking about really happens. This couple can fill a combination of the 12 and 22% brackets, and an estimated after-tax wealth improvement by the end of life is a bit over $500,000. So the room in this conversion zone is quite valuable from a tax perspective. Well, in planning for real-world families, there are other variables at play in the retirement discussion than just optimizing taxes. So a question we often receive is, what happens if I decide to work a little bit longer and effectively decrease the space that I have in this quote-unquote Goldilocks zone? Am I working, making, say, $100,000 only to eliminate $100,000 worth of tax savings later in life? In that case, it would seem that I'm basically working for no reason. It's all a wash at the end. Well, let's try to put this idea to the test. Here's Mike and Sarah. Right now, they are financially able to retire given their spending goals and asset levels. But as might be the case with many of you on the edge of retirement, Mike and Sarah are currently making more than they have ever before, earning about $265,000 per year combined. They certainly don't love their jobs to the point that they want to work forever, but they also don't hate their jobs. And as I mentioned, the money is really good right now. And so if they retired this year, their best bet is to max out the 22% bracket. But if they kept working, they are making enough where they're being pushed into the 24% bracket, giving no room for Roth conversions. Pretty simply, every year that they work rules out a year that they would otherwise be Roth converted. Let's take a look at their situation if they retired right now. With this graph, I'm just trying to simplify things and show the top marginal tax bracket that they would be subject to in retirement. Now, there are certain assumptions that, frankly, I'm just going to gloss over and explain this just because going super in depth into why this is their optimal strategy is not really the point of this exact video. The big takeaway here is that you can see by doing some reasonable conversions on the front end of retirement, they avoid being taxed at much higher rates in the future. This is where that $500,000 in tax savings comes from. But every additional year that they work from here will end up lowering the overall tax savings they're expected to receive. For instance, if they retired right now, we'd want to go more aggressive this year with the client. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is set to expire at the end of this year, and so this could be the last year of lower tax rates. Now, this could change and be extended by year end, but right now the expectation is based on the rules that we know as we sit here today. As a side note, in actually talking with that client, we would run scenarios in both cases, extension and the sunsetting of current tax laws, and then talk through the best plan of action from there. But if they work a year longer, then we have no ability to use the current tax rates to our advantage. So the cost of working 1 year longer is sizable from a tax perspective. If they retired 2 years from now, the best strategy changes and a more aggressive strategy is needed. As you can see, expected tax benefits drop with each additional year they work. Two things are happening here with every additional year they work. Number one, the conversion Goldilocks zone, or time that we have to convert, essentially shortens. Then number two, every additional year means they are not withdrawing from their accounts, but rather adding to them, which in turn will grow future tax liabilities. So again, we ask the question, should Mike and Sarah retire early, primarily for tax reasons? This is where you're going to get a completely unsatisfactory answer from me. It depends. What is Mike and Sarah's goal? If their goal is to try to accumulate the most wealth, then Mike and Sarah should keep working regardless of missing out on some tax savings. Think about it. If they are grossing $265,000 a year, after tax income is about $210,000, depending on which accounts they end up contributing to. If their retirement spending goal is $120,000, then we can assume that this would be their basic living expense budget as well. This means they're going to have about $90,000 of additional savings that they can add back into their wealth. But really, this is about a $210,000 difference if we compare to retirement. In retirement, they would be pulling $120,000, so an additional year of work means they don't need to pull that money and instead get to add $90,000 into investment accounts. This $210,000 improvement over 1 year is way more than any expected tax benefit from a conversion over that same year. Tax strategies are a marginal improvement where adding additional dollars to your accounts is an absolute improvement. So we could take this logic to an extreme, and if their main goal was simply accumulation of wealth, well, then they should basically work right up until the day they pass away. From a pure accumulation standpoint, working is always better. So to answer from that lens, no, you should not retire early just for tax reasons. But there are a few people with a goal of just pure accumulation. Here's how I think about the hierarchy of retirement timing decisions. First, you have to ask yourself, can I financially afford to retire given my overall goals? If the answer is no, then really nothing else matters. Keep working as you really don't have any other option to retire. But let's say the answer is yes. Okay, we can move on to the next question. Do you want to retire? Are you ready to retire? Will your retired life be better than your working life? Again, if the answer is no, we don't need to move on. Keep working as you've just said, your working life is better than your retired life right now. These first two questions are really where most people should spend their time with some pretty deep thought. Take Mike and Sarah's case. If they can retire safely and they want to retire, meaning their retirement will improve their lives, then the right answer is they should probably retire. Sure, they can make more and accumulate more wealth by working, but this isn't a game where the person who dies with the most wealth wins. Everyone needs to define when enough is enough. If they are at a point where they have enough, the tax implications should not rule the timing of retirement decision here. It's after becoming very clear on these first two questions that you should finally consider the other variables and optimizing these variables. I'm not saying this point is irrelevant. For instance, say if Mike worked 1 month longer, he would get a $50,000 bonus based on the previous year's body of work. The best answer is probably to work 1 month longer, as the benefit to cost ratio is quite in Mike's favor. So it's not as if he shouldn't factor in things like healthcare, employee benefits, taxes, and more. It's just that these variables will only shift the optimal retirement date by at most a few months. The first two questions can shift retirement by years. So again, there will be a tax benefit to Mike and Sarah retiring now or early. However, there will be a greater wealth benefit to Mike and Sarah working longer. The decision they should make ultimately depends more on their goals rather than a quantitative metric on the back end. I hope you found this video helpful if you are facing a similar situation to Mike and Sarah. If you're looking for more valuable information on tax planning and retirement, click on this video right here where I talk about the true value of a Roth conversion during a market downturn. Click here to learn more, and always remember, you don't need more money, you need a better plan. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.